Well, with her thoughts on all of this, we're now happy to be welcomed back to the program, the Alberta Premier Danielle Smith. Premier, thank you for making the time.
My pleasure. Nice to see you, Michael.
And you. Listen, I was reading some of the earlier comment that you gave on the tweet, or I guess the post that was put out by the incoming president on Truth Social, because you describe his concerns about drugs and illegal migrants as being legitimate. So I'm wondering if you could build on that, because I think for many Canadians, when they hear concerns about illegal drugs, illegal migrants, they think for the United States it's mainly an issue coming from Mexico. But from what you know of what's happening along our shared border, just what is coming from Canada into the United States?
Well, look, we've got a very serious opioid and fentanyl crisis in our province. We're seeing record numbers of deaths and have for a number of years. And we know that there are components coming in from British Columbia and the United States and then going back out the other way again. We've got to address that issue, not only for our own people, but now, of course, because the Americans have identified that too. We also see that with the open borders policy that the federal government has had for the last couple of years, 1.8 million people came into Canada in 2023, and the Americans have seen a doubling of the number of contacts at the Canadian border. So they're beginning to see that illegal migrants are using Canada as a staging area to get into the United States. We have to take the Americans' concerns at face value, address them if we're going to be able to get on to talk about our mutual interests on trade.
Mm-hmm. But is this 25% tariff threat justified, or do you see it as basically a negotiating tactic?
Well, look, I take the U.S. president, the incoming president, seriously. He's very clear about the things that are irritating to him when it comes to his relationship with Canada. He's irritated by China using increasingly Mexico, but in the past it's been Canada as a staging area to get cheap products into the United States and hollow out their manufacturing sector. He's been very frustrated by immigration. He's been frustrated by fentanyl. He has been frustrated by the fact that Canada isn't pulling its weight in meeting its 2% NATO defense spending target. So I would say that those things, that if that's what he is leading with, saying that the condition of having fruitful trade negotiations means solving these things, it's up to us to pressure the federal government to solve these things.
Mm-hmm. What would that kind of tariff do to the Alberta economy, though?
Oh, devastating. I think every one of us realizes how devastating it would be, because it's not just the tariffs. You also have a federal government that is piling on a variety of different policies that make life more expensive. The carbon tax is anticipated to go up to 61 cents per liter when it comes to gasoline and diesel. That'll make everything so much more expensive than the United States. The capital gains tax changes. So if you've got businesses making decisions about where they're going to invest to be able to get access to a favorable market, we're going to see all of those dollars heading south. And so I'm very concerned about the 25% tariff, not just on oil and gas, but on our agri-food products, on our forestry products, on our increasingly robust manufacturing sector. We have to take this seriously. We have to address these things that are causing the trade tension.
Mm-hmm. Now, we did hear from Pierre Poilievre today. He had a news conference here in Ottawa, and I want to play a part of what he had to say for you and for people at home. Take a listen to this.
The Prime Minister has to put aside partisanship and, in the spirit of Team Canada, cancel his energy cap, which would see Alberta and Saskatchewan produce 35% less energy at a time when we need those jobs. It is our biggest industry and our biggest export.
Now, for Canadians who are perhaps more concerned about greenhouse gases, that statement might be a bit jarring. But I'm wondering what your reaction is to what we heard from Mr. Poilievre, also how you think removing the emissions cap would perhaps help Canada forge a working relationship with the incoming Trump administration.
Well, look, Pierre Poilievre is absolutely right. We know that the emissions cap being proposed is so aggressive on such a short time frame. The only way to reach it is by shutting in production. We think at least 1 million barrels per day by 2030 and 2 million barrels per day by 2035. You can't go to the Americans and say, hey, we're your solution to energy security. At the same time, back home, you're crushing the very industry that is going to provide that security. So I would say that one of the first things that Trudeau should do, if he wants to demonstrate good faith, if he wants to demonstrate it is a Team Canada approach, and he understands how important energy security is to to the Americans and energy affordability is to the Americans, that he would take that off the table. One other thing that the incoming president has said is that he wants gasoline and diesel prices to go down. He certainly won't be able to do that if he adds a 25% tariff to oil and even to natural gas. We want to make sure that that is communicated well, so that we can use that as a point of negotiation. But I don't think that we get to that discussion until we address the things that are causing the irritation to the Americans in the first place. I think we've got to take the Trump administration at face value when they say they want a more secure border, they want to stop the fentanyl, they want to stop the illegal migration, they want us to meet our 2% NATO commitment. Those are the things we've got to deal with first.
Mm-hmm. Now, it just so happens, and I realize this was planned before Mr. Trump took to Truth Social last night, but it just so happens you introduced a motion today to push back on those emission caps from Ottawa, and it's going to happen before that national phone call tomorrow. Do you think that kind of legislative approach is going to have an impact on the kind of Team Canada spirit that the Prime Minister is asking for?
Well, look, I mean, we have to defend the interests of Albertans, and $120 billion worth of our oil and gas product goes across the border into the United States. It's the lion's share of our cross-border relationship with the Americans. We've got some 4 million barrels per day of production that is going down to the U.S. It's a heavy oil, and so it can be used to produce a number of products. It's the main thing that their refineries need in the Gulf Coast. It allows for them to rely on us rather than rely on Venezuela or Iran for their product. They need it for their strategic petroleum reserve. We think that it's a responsible thing to do, to send the message to Trudeau that there's no point in going forward with an emissions cap that is going to result in production losses, not only now because of our relationship with the United States, but it's unconstitutional. And we're prepared to assert that. We're certainly not going to put Alberta's interests aside in having negotiations as part of the team. What I would ask is for Trudeau to put his terrible policy aside in taking a Team Canada approach. And that's what I'll be talking to him about when we all meet as a group tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. You know, we were all in Halifax for the Council of the Federation when the premiers were one by one saying there was not enough consultation with Ottawa. You're now going to have this consultation. Do you think, given the challenges of the first Trump administration, this is the type of thing that needs to be formalized at an annual, biannual meeting of the First Ministers?
Well, look, we've been asking to have a formal First Ministers Conference for some time because we've seen, as we've been watching what is happening in the United States, we've seen how much the federal government has neglected its area of strategic defense and strategic infrastructure. If you look at the communiques coming out of the premiers, and remember, we come from all party stripes. If you look at the most recent communiques coming out, it was very much focused on what our relationship might look like with the United States if there was a change of government. We've been alive to this for some time. And it's disappointing that the Prime Minister hasn't asked to meet with us sooner. I'm glad that Doug Ford is now at the helm of the Council of the Federation, and he's managed to secure a meeting that we've been trying for some time. And I hope that it's a productive one. But it is going to require a little bit of soul searching on the part of Justin Trudeau to understand what he has done to create the circumstances that we find ourselves in, make amends, reverse course on some policies, and get this relationship back on track.
Premier Danielle Smith and I have a busy schedule today. Thank you very much for the time.
You bet. Thank you.